Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Keith Whittier and welcome to episode 8 of Let's Talk Racism. Today we are going to be joined by a very courageous individual. Before we get to that, thank you so much for taking the time to check this out, whether this is your first episode or you've seen some of the other 7. I really appreciate your support. Today we're going to be speaking with somebody who really caught my eye in the last month or so. And I say that because I was scrolling through Facebook and I came across a blog where they were talking about the abuse that they endured as a child. They lived across the street from the school that they went to, and if their father ever saw them speaking to a person of color, they would have to endure not only verbal but physical abuse. This person is very courageous for taking the time to come out and talk about some of those experiences, and I definitely hope that you have the time to listen to what she has to say. Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 8.
Ladies and gentlemen, the conversation continues, and I truly appreciate you joining us for this very special episode of Let's Talk Racism. We have Jeannie here with us today, and we are going to be speaking with her for the next little while. Over the last while, I've had the opportunity of speaking to a lot of people and getting their opinions on things that have been happening in the States or speaking about racism from multiple points of view. And Jeannie is going to add to that discussion, but from a very different perspective. I'll explain what I mean in a moment. But first of all, welcome, Jeannie. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Not too bad at all, thanks. Now,
Thanks for having me.
thanks so much for agreeing to join me. I really appreciate it. Before we get into our discussion, of course, we're in the middle of this pandemic. First and foremost, how are you doing?
Well, I'll be honest, have some good days and some bad days. I'm here alone, so it's been kind of challenging some days. And I really miss all the social things that I used to do kind of after work, like movies. And, just going out. I used to host trivia, so that's kind of like a nice thing to do in a group of people. So that part's been missing. But in general, well, thank you.
Good. Now that's interesting because before we came on, we were talking, and before I hit record, we were talking, and I was thinking the first time that we really met was at a movie screening, but it was actually, you corrected me, you were hosting a Breaking Bad trivia night
Yes.
that I participated in. I did not win, had an amazing time, and then after that, like in a lot of major cities here in Canada, there are different movie screenings that you can go to. So these are advanced screenings before they're released to the public, usually on a Wednesday night. And you and I would both enter and win similar contests. And then when I started doing my reviewing, I started hosting these contests myself, which you might have won a time or two. So I know you, of course, from the trivia night, but we've seen each other at many screenings together. And me being the person I am, if I see that this is a particular night you're flying solo, I say come and join us, and it's always awesome hanging out with you. So would you agree that I think you and I have always had like a pretty good rapport?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, you always have this really positive energy, really always happy to see people, like genuinely happy. So yeah, it's always great when I get to spend any time with you. Yeah.
Yeah, and let me return the compliment, because one of the things I really like about you is that you were obviously a big movie enthusiast yourself, and then you end up getting a job at Landmark Cinemas. I'm like, this lady knows what she's doing, so I thought that was fantastic. So, just to establish that, although we don't know each other extremely well, there's always been a very, very friendly rapport between us. So lately, of course, we've all been dealing with the news of what happened in the States several weeks ago with the unnecessary death of George Floyd. And this has been consuming media and news. And obviously I'm doing a series on Let's Talk Racism now to generate discussions. And through that, a lot of people have been reaching out, giving me their thoughts on it, talking to me about their different experiences. And as such, lots of people have been posting different things on Facebook and different social media. Now, I was really struck and taken aback by something that you had posted not that long after the George Floyd incident, if you will. This was a post that you wrote that I thought was extremely powerful, And before I get into it, I mean, it's your story. Can you tell us a little bit about the post that I'm referring to?
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of thinking about all the things that are happening in the world, and I wrote a post that kind of talked about the way I was raised. So my dad was a racist alcoholic, violent racist alcoholic, and he really tried to instill those beliefs into his kids. I'm the oldest of three, so I probably remember the most about what kind of things he tried to teach us. And I really wanted to kind of post that you don't have to grow up that way. Just because your parents or your dad feels that way, you don't have to kind of carry that on into your life. And you don't have to carry that on into your kids' lives. So it was kind of a selfish thing that I did. I wanted to kind of release myself of this. But I also wanted to instill some hope in other people that are kind of going through this. Maybe they're younger, that you don't have to be like this, that you can make up your own mind and have your own views and not contribute to something that's so negative in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, approximately how old were you when that you remember when this started with your father?
Well, we left my dad when I was 15, so it
Okay.
was from birth
Okay.
until we finally left him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I remember in the post you were saying that the place that you guys lived in was right across the street from a school,
Yeah.
and if your dad saw you speaking to anybody of color, then you knew there was going to be an issue.
Yes. Yeah, that's the thing. I grew up in Toronto,
Okay.
and about 1/3 of the kids in my school were of color, so it's mostly a white school.
Okay.
And my dad made sure to let us know who we were allowed to be friends with and who we were not allowed to be friends with. He made it very clear, and that even transferred into the teachers. So I usually had white teachers, I think until, I want to say 3rd or 4th grade. And okay, maybe it was 6th grade.
Okay.
So I was becoming more of an adult and having not behavioral problems, but, kind of rebelling a bit. And one of my teachers was a man of color. I can't remember really where he was from. And he didn't really like my attitude in school. I talked too much and didn't maybe do my homework like I was supposed to. And he gave me some grades my dad wasn't happy with.
Okay.
And during the parent-teacher interview, I remember him threatening my teacher and calling him racial slurs in order to get him to change my grades.
Okay.
I know this isn't something that I should be laughing about, but when I feel uncomfortable, I tend to sort of laugh inappropriately, I guess.
No,
But it
that's
was
fine.
horrific
There's
to me.
no
I was
judgment.
so embarrassed,
Yeah.
that he would do that. And because I thought that was like our secret at home, that it wouldn't really spill out into the world. And now I had this teacher that kind of knew my secret and what my dad was like. And I don't think my grades changed. I don't think it helped.
Yeah. So there's a couple of questions I have. First of all, so again, I at the beginning, I made a point of stating that you and I have always gotten along. We've never had any sort of disagreement or anything of that nature. So how is it, I don't know how else to say this, but how did you turn out so okay? How did you turn out so good? Because one of the things that, and I don't know if you've been watching these episodes, but one of the things that we've been talking about is just basically the source of racism really comes from the home as well as our educational system, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And in the home, so we've seen it, we're talking about real life examples here where you have a father that's basically telling you, that you shouldn't be associating with people who look like me and saying all these extremely vile, angry things. But here you are, and you are like one of like the nicest people out there. You're nice with everybody. So So, I mean, but the fact is that there are a lot of people who would be raised in that similar environment who would come out with a completely different mentality and have a lot of anger and preconceived notions. So how is it that for lack of a better term, but maybe an accurate term, brainwashing didn't work on you?
It's kind of funny. I grew up in Toronto with a certain group of non-white people from certain countries, and then we moved to Thunder Bay. Okay. And that is a very less ethnically diverse population, but there are a lot of Indigenous people in Thunder Bay. So all the things that I heard growing up, even though we didn't take my dad with me, all the things that I heard growing up about these people in Toronto were suddenly being applied to Indigenous people. So the exact same insults, the exact same racist kind of assumptions were being, addressed towards Indigenous people. And I remember I was probably like 14, 15 years old. And I remember saying to somebody, I had no idea that there was anything wrong with Indigenous people until I came to Thunder Bay, because that kind of view wasn't shared where I grew up in Toronto.
Okay.
So I suddenly sort of dawned on me that racism is a completely arbitrary view of people. It's directed towards people that you live around more than I think people are, well, in my situation, it was directed only at the people that we lived around, and then those views were sort of transplanted to a new group of people. So the only thing that those people had in common is they weren't white.
Okay.
So I kind of started to think that I don't want to meet people, and the first thing that I notice is the container that the person comes in. Now, I'm not saying that I don't see color, which is kind of like a shorthand for I'm not racist these days. I just feel like we're all in this world in different containers, and what's more important is what's inside. How meeting you makes me feel, how you treat other people, how kind of your vibe is much more important than me looking at you and saying, Keith is a Black guy, so I can't be friends with him. So I kind of like realized what the priority was. The priority wasn't to look at somebody and judge them according to what they look like. Now that also applies to people that are bigger, people that are in any way different from you. It's the inside that counts. And I don't want to sound like a hippie or whatever, that I'm so accepting of everyone, but I realized that racism was like just completely wrong, and it was the wrong way to look at people and to decide who you were going to be friends with.
Yeah.
So I try to carry that forward, with everyone I meet.
No, that's fair. I'm curious. So when you left the situation with your dad, I'm assuming you left with your mom and your siblings?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess your father didn't have an impact on them either?
Oh yeah, well, I can't speak for my brother and sister,
okay.
But his message was consistent for our entire family.
Okay, fair.
So I can only speak of my interpretation and how I took that moving forward.
No, absolutely. Do you have a relationship with your father now?
No, actually, not to get into like.
No, that's fine.
TMI,
no,
but.
No is a simple answer.
Yeah, no.
Okay. I'm not looking to pry in any way, shape, or form. No, I'm just curious if after time, if things were able to reconcile. So let me ask you this, because again, I really appreciate your perspective, because I will tell you, I am impressed and really proud of the bravery that you showed in sharing such a post, because that is not an easy thing to do. And I will tell you that I don't think that you're alone in that. I think there are a lot of people that have gone through situations like that, because I've talked about online and offline. I've talked about experiences that I've had growing up, and things that were called to me, and things that were said to me, and I can recount things that were said to my parents, things that were said to my brother, and on and on and on. And the thing is that that stems from somewhere, right? In one house, you might be being taught love is love and to appreciate people, but in another house, you're being taught a completely other, you know, interpretation of how you should treat people. So I commend your bravery in terms of stepping up. But I can say, whether other people, you know, want to put their hand up and admit it, I'm quite sure there are a lot of other families that went through something similar.
Mhm.
So what do you say to to people today in terms of, like, what is it that you think that they need to do to make sure that, you know, like when they're raising kids and they're around impressionable, you know, people, like, again, like children, what have you, not to follow down that same path?
Oh gosh. Um, that's a good
Because
question because I don't have kids, so I never really had to go through that and try to um, impart some knowledge to kids. But I would
okay,
just say, yeah, go ahead. What were you going to
okay, and that's fair, and that's fair. So let
take
me
me
ask you
off the
this then.
hook?
Yeah, I will. I don't want to. So let me ask you this then. So we're in a situation right now where we are seeing, it's, to me, this is a very different moment that we've experienced before,
Mhm.
where you're having a lot of people um, who aren't black, who are putting their hands up and saying, "Hey, I want to be allies, and I
Yes.
want to assist, and I want to do what I can to bring awareness to this, and not only bring awareness to this, but to help to 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 mitigate it, to
Mhm.
eliminate it." What do you think needs to be done to help eliminate, or, I mean, eliminate might be a little kumbaya-ish, but to bring down the spread of racism, to what can people do in situations so they don't have the mentality that your father tried to impart on you?
I think that we're very lucky now that kids have access to social media and that they can meet people from around the world, that they're much more exposed to ethnically diverse people that they can actually get to know. So even though they're not maybe in the same room together, they can interact with these people across, like we are with video or through email. So I think that that presents a unique opportunity for young people because they're, I think, much more accepting than I was in the way I grew up because I didn't really have a lot of opportunity to interact with people away from my parents, right? So I didn't have this kind of world knowledge that kids have now. And I think that with the advent of video and that everything is being videoed, I think that people on some level know the difference between right and wrong. And it doesn't matter that so much it's a person, a black person that's being attacked in a video. You can automatically just see that if that was anybody, that's wrong.
Hmm.
Then you kind of multiply the fact that it seems to be black people constantly. So people, I think, they're becoming aware that, you know, I think before video, people thought, okay, well, that person was attacked by a police officer and there was justification for it because we didn't know the whole story. We didn't see it on video. But now we're seeing all these examples of where it's not justified and it's just plain wrong. So I think I was thinking about the Me Too movement and how women were silenced and ashamed to come forward with all the things that were happening to them in all these kind of positions of power, kind of abusing them. So we can do better for women, and more people are being, you know, held to task for the things like being charged and being sent to jail.
Hmm.
And then with COVID, we see what's happening in the long-term care system. And we realize that we can do better for our elderly, vulnerable population. And with Black Lives Matter, with all the videos and everything that are coming up, we realize we can do better for Black people. So I think I saw a meme that said, when COVID is done and everything goes back to normal, what do you want that to look like? And I think that with all the kind of things that are bubbling to the surface that we're sort of, underneath, and all the things we're becoming aware of, we don't have to go back to normal. We can go back, we can make things better for the people that need our help. And I think because we're young, doesn't mean that we're not concerned about the elderly people in long-term care homes. Because you're a man, you're not concerned about all the women that are going through all this in Me Too. And because I'm white, doesn't mean that I'm not concerned about what's happening with Black Lives Matter. And I think that a lot of white people are realizing it has to be done as a community. It has to be done across the country. Everybody has to stand up for what's right and what's wrong. And that's the only way we're going to move forward. So hopefully I answered your question.
You answered my question. That was a very good answer, and I really appreciate it. And I agree with you. I think one of the things that's very different now is, and I talked about this in one of the earlier episodes, where you were seeing some commentary where people were coming out kind of like anti-Black Lives Matter or pushing back on it, and then you were seeing on their social media they were getting not attacked, but kind of put in their place, if you will, by people of all ethnicities, where people are saying, come on, smarten up, you're better than that type of verbiage. And that's different because, to your point before, this is something that's been happening for quite a while, and there hasn't seemed to be the level of action. One of my concerns was, okay, is this something that we're going to talk about? Is this something that's going to be in the news? And then it's just going to die down, and that doesn't seem to be the case at all. So I'm very impressed with that. I want to really thank you for sharing your story. And again, I know that it's not an easy thing to talk about, especially when you're talking about somebody who's so closely related to you. But I think your story is also very relatable. And I think there's a lot of people that while it might not have been to the degree in terms of like the severity of what you experienced, just as far as I'm concerned, as soon as you're in a home and you're being taught that thing, being taught those beliefs, that's a form of abuse, and that's not cool, even before you get into the actual physical abuse. So I really sincerely and truly appreciate your bravery, and I think that there are people that are going to be able to hear what you've said and relate to it, and hopefully some other people will hear that and say, that's not how I want to parent my kids. So I sincerely thank you for taking the time to chat with me. Before we came on, you were like, I'm really nervous. I'm like, and now I'm thinking you hustled me because you spoke. You were extremely confident, and I love talking to you, as I always do. And before I let you go, on a lighter note, I hear movies are supposed to be opening at the end of this month, like movie theaters. Is this a thing?
I heard that as well. I know that they're working on opening in Quebec.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that that'll happen for us pretty soon. And I know that Landmark actually was sending out some emails talking about that they have increased protocols in place and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm very excited.
Well, who knows? Maybe
I'll be sitting in an empty theater too.
Right? Well, maybe I'll be seeing you sooner rather than later. So
yes.
Jeannie, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you. I appreciate that you did not turn out that way. Otherwise, we would have missed out on a lot of fun times.
Exactly.
We've been talking with Jeannie. She is a remarkable woman, and just another amazing story on this journey that I call Let's Talk Racism. Thank you so much for checking this out, guys, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.